Many years ago, in the northern lands, there was a kingdom unlike any other. Surrounding the kingdom were enormous gemstone and diamond mines. Because of them, nearly every town was connected in one way or another to the diamond trade. Some people were wealthy merchants, others were poor miners, but there was one thing they all had in common. Every child in that kingdom knew how to recognize a genuine diamond. No one could fool them. They knew the difference between ordinary glass and something priceless. Over that kingdom ruled a wise and righteous king. His name was respected throughout the land. He was known for his wisdom, his integrity, and his kindness. Yet despite all his wealth and honor, there was one treasure that was dear to him more than anything else: his only son. The king dreamed that one day his son will inherit his throne, rule with wisdom, and continue the glorious kingdom that has been built throughout generations. But the prince, he lived as though life was one big joke. Learning did not interest him at all. Responsibility bored him. He chased only after pleasures and entertainment, laughing his way through life without giving a thought to the future. The king tried everything. He tried to hire the greatest teachers. He bought the finest mentors. He spent countless nights speaking to his son with love, sometimes with encouragement, sometimes with tears, and sometimes with firm discipline. Nothing helped. Finally, one sleepless night, with a broken heart, the king made the most painful decision of his life. If he remains inside the palace, he whispered to himself, he will never appreciate what he has. Better that he learns the hard way than never learning at all. The next morning, the king summoned his son. "My dear son," he said softly, "today I am entrusting you with the most important mission I have ever given anyone." The prince smiled. "A mission?" The king reached into a small wooden box and carefully removed an elegant pocket watch. It looked old, nothing extraordinary. The prince turned it over in his hand. "What's so special about this watch?" The king leaned forward. "There is a great thief, the greatest thief the kingdom had ever known. He robbed kings, merchants, and noblemen until he became unimaginably wealthy. Eventually, he decided it was time to marry off his beautiful daughter. He chose the most feared gang leader in all of the northern lands for his daughter. He sent one of his trusted messengers carrying this very watch. The messenger's instructions were very simple. He was to hand over the watch and ask only one question. How much would you pay for the time this watch represents? That was the question. Only the intended recipient knew the meaning of those words. Only he could answer correctly. Before the messenger reached his destinations, my royal guards captured him. They questioned him. He revealed everything except the thief's hiding place. He died before revealing that final secret. The king paused. "My son, now that mission belongs to you. Travel from town to town, show people this watch, ask them the same question. The day you meet the man who understands those words, you will have found the thief. You will recover all his fortune, and if you prove yourself worthy," the king smiled, "his daughter will become your wife." The prince's eyes lit up. "So all I have to do is travel around asking one question?" The king nodded yes. "But understand, this is your test. Prove to me that you deserve everything waiting for you." Then the king placed both of his hands on his son's shoulder. "There is one more thing. I promise you, wherever you go, I will keep my eyes on you and will help you if needed." The prince laughed. "I'll be fine." He took the watch, bowed quickly, and walked out of the palace. But there was one secret the king never told him. The watch wasn't no ordinary watch. Hidden beneath its face was a rare diamond, a diamond reserved only for royalty. Its value was over $500 million. Every jeweler, collector, every criminal, every thief in that kingdom will be willing to kill for it. But the prince had no idea. He walked outside, found his friends, held up the watch, and laughed. "My father still thinks I'm a little child. He actually told me he's going to watch over me." The friends burst into laughter. But inside the palace, the king wasn't laughing. The moment the prince disappeared beyond the palace gates, the king summoned the commander of the royal guards. "Take only my finest soldiers. From this moment on, you will never leave my son's side, not for a single minute. He must never know you were there. If his life is in danger, save him immediately. And every hour, day and night, report everything to me." The commander bowed. "As you command, Your Majesty." From that day on, the king never slept peacefully again. Every knock on the palace door made his heart race. Every report began with the same question: "My son, is he alive?" It wasn't long before trouble came. The very first day, the prince saw an armored truck transporting precious jewels. Fascinated by the vehicle and the armored guards, he walked over, pulled out the watch, and with a smile asked, "Tell me, how much would you pay for the time this watch represents?" The driver froze. He wasn't even a diamond expert, but one glance was enough. He knew immediately the stone inside that watch was worth a fortune. Within minutes, armed criminals surrounded the prince. Weapons were drawn. One wrong move, and it's over. The prince fought desperately to protect the watch, but not because he understood its value, but because he believed it was the key to find the thief's daughter. Suddenly, shots rang out. Smoke filled the street. Unknown men attacked the criminals from every direction. Within moments, the prince escaped. The mysterious rescuers disappeared as quickly as they had arrived. The prince stood there, catching his breath. "I did it," he whispered proudly to himself. "I got away." He had no idea that the king's soldiers had risked their own lives to save him. That evening, the commander returned to the palace. The king stood. Before he could even speak, "My son, is he alive?" "Yes, Your Majesty." The king closed his eyes with relief. Then the commander described everything that had happened. The king's face turned pale. He tore his garments in grief. "My poor son, he doesn't even realize he's a sheep walking among 70 wolves. He thinks he survived on his own." Little did the prince know his journey had just begun. From that day on, the prince wandered from town to town. Wherever he went, he asked the same question: "How much would you pay for the time this watch represents?" Some people laughed. Others became suspicious, but every so often, someone with a sharp eye would notice the extraordinary diamond hidden within the watch. From that moment, everything changed. People who had greeted him with a smile suddenly became dangerous. Some pretended to be his friends. Others invited him into their homes. Some even offered him food and a place to sleep, but all of them wanted only one thing: the watch. Time after time, the prince found himself trapped. Sometimes he escaped by running, sometimes by fighting, and sometimes he escaped only because from somewhere in the shadows, unseen soldiers quietly removed the danger before he even realized how close death had come. Yet after every escape, the prince smiled to himself. "I knew I can handle it. I always find a way. I don't need anyone." Every evening, the commander returned to the king. Every evening, the king asked only one question: "Is my son alive?" "Yes, Your Majesty." And today, the commander lowered his head. Another ambush. The soldiers? They saved him. And does he know? "No, Your Majesty." The king closed his eyes. Tears rolled slowly down his face. "My son thinks he's becoming stronger, and he has no idea that every breath he is taking in is protected." Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The story spread throughout the kingdom. There is a strange young man traveling with a watch worth a fortune. No one knows where he came from. He's dangerous. He always escapes. Soon, everyone was looking for him. The prince couldn't trust no one. He was cheated, mocked, beaten, humiliated. Still, he held tightly to the watch. Somewhere inside him, he never forgot his father's promise: "If I complete this mission, everything will be waiting for me." Inside the palace, there was no joy anymore. The king no longer attended royal banquets. Music no longer interested him. The royal court noticed that the king's chair remained empty for hours at a time. One evening, the commander entered quietly. He found the king standing alone, staring outside the palace window. "Your Majesty." Without turning around, the king asked, "Did he eat today?" "Very little." "Did he sleep?" "Only a few hours." "Was he hurt?" The commander hesitated. "Yes." The king leaned against the wall. He whispered, "If only I could carry his pain instead of him." Then something happened that no one in the kingdom expected. The king removed his royal robes. He took off his crown. He dressed like an ordinary traveler. The commander looked at him and asked, "Your Majesty, where are you going?" The king answered quietly, "I cannot remain in the palace any longer. If my son is sleeping on the ground, how can I continue sleeping in a palace?" From that day on, the king himself traveled throughout the kingdom, never revealing who he was, always watching from a distance. Many times he saw his son sitting alone beside the road, hungry, exhausted, and covered with bruises. More than once, the king almost ran towards his son to tell him, "My son, I'm here." But each time he stopped himself. "If I reveal myself too early, he will return to the palace exactly as he left it. The journey will have been for nothing." One afternoon, the prince sat beneath a tree after barely escaping another attack. He looked toward the sky and cried out, "Father, you promised you would watch over me. Where are you? Why have you abandoned me? Have you grown tired of me? Did you throw me away?" The king heard every word. He could no longer stand. He fell to his knees and wept. The commander stood silently beside him. "Should I tell him the truth?" he asked softly. The king shook his head. "No, but he believes you abandoned him." "I know. He thinks you no longer love him." "I know. Then why remain silent?" The king wiped away his tears. "Because I don't want him to return as a spoiled child. I want him to return as a king." There are moments in life when silence is not the absence of love. Sometimes it is love in its deepest form. Years passed. The prince crossed mountains, forests, deserts. Eventually, he wandered into hostile territories. He was captured, sold into forced labor, and for 6 long years he worked as a slave. There were days he almost gave up, days he was angry, days he cried, days he spoke to his father in his heart, and days when he could no longer bring himself to speak at all. Everything he once believed became confused. Who could be trusted? Who could not? Why was all this happening? But somehow, against all odds, he survived. One quiet night, after escaping captivity, he laid beneath the stars, and for the first time in years, his thoughts returned him to the palace. He remembered being a little boy. He remembered one day when a wild bear charged towards him. Without hesitation, his father stepped between him and the bear, risking his own life. Suddenly, the prince sat upright. "No, it can't be. My father was willing to die for me. He will never stop loving me. If I don't see him, perhaps he's been watching over me from the shadows all along." At that exact moment, the king smiled for the first time in many years. He's beginning to understand, at last. The journey home could truly begin. And indeed, the prince slowly noticed something strange. The roads leading home seemed clearer. People began helping him for no apparent reason. Obstacles disappeared one after another. It was as though someone was quietly guiding him back towards the palace. The king watched from a distance, his heart filled with joy. "My son, just a little further. You're almost home." Years passed. The prince was no longer the same young man who had left the palace. The hardship had humbled him. The suffering had refined him. The journey had changed him. One evening, as he climbed a mountain overlooking his homeland, he suddenly recognized the landscape. "I've seen those hills before." His heart began pounding. He wasn't back yet. The palace was still hidden beyond the horizon, but for the very first time he knew he was heading in the right direction. As the days passed, more signs began to appear. Old roads that had once been blocked were suddenly open. Travelers he met all seemed to point in the same direction. people he had never met before, quietly helped him continue his journey. It was as though someone was guiding him home without revealing himself. Far away, hidden from sight, the king watched his beloved son. The commander smiled. "Your Majesty, shall we finally reveal ourselves?" The king slowly shook his head. "Not yet. But look at him. He has changed." "Yes," replied the king softly. "He has changed. But he still has little further to go." The commander remained silent. The king continued, "If I reveal myself now, he will rejoice because he has found his father. I want something even greater. I want him to become the kind of man who truly belongs in the palace." The king looked towards his son in the distance. He no longer runs after every distraction. He protects the treasure I endured to him. He has learned humility. He has learned patience. He has learned trust. But there are still a few corners of his heart that must be refined. The king smiled through tears. The journey home has begun. The palace is no longer far away. He simply doesn't know it yet. My dear friends, this is not merely a story. It is the story of Klal Yisrael. Nearly 2,000 years ago, on Tishah B'Av, we left the king's palace. But Hashem did not send us into Galus empty-handed. He entrusted us with the greatest treasure in creation, the Torah HaKadoshah. Like the prince, we have carried that treasure throughout every generation. Sometimes we appreciated it. Sometimes we forgot how priceless it truly is. Throughout all those years, we endured exile, crusades, the inquisitions, pogroms, the Holocaust, persecution in every corner of the world. We cried out, "Ribono shel olam, where are you?" But the Navi tells us, "B'chol tzarasam lo yitzor." In all their suffering, he suffers with them. And as David HaMelech says in Tehillim, "Yikoeni ve'anehu, imoy anochi b'tzorah chaltzeu v'achabdehu." He will call upon me and I will answer him. I am with him in his pain. I will rescue him and honor him. The king never remained in his palace. The Shekhinah went into Galus together with us. Every blow that Klal Yisrael received caused him even greater pain. Every tear we cried, he cried together with us. But my dear friends, look around us. We are still in Galus, yes, true. The king has not yet revealed himself. The Beis HaMikdash has not yet been rebuilt. The Shekhinah is still hidden. But can anyone deny that the road home has opened? For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people wandered across the world. Now, before our very eyes, Jewish people begin returning home from all four corners of the world. The mountains of Eretz Yisrael that laid desolated for centuries have blossomed once again. The land is once again giving its fruits to her children. Chazal told us long ago, "Ein lecha keitz megula mizeh." There is no clearer sign that the Geulah is approaching than this. These are not yet the palace gates, but they are the road leading to them. The king has not yet revealed himself, but perhaps he is already sending us unmistakable signs that the journey is almost over. And maybe he is waiting for just one more thing. The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam. Avas chinam is the foundation of the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every time we forgive, every time we judge another Jew favorably, every moment we choose unity over division brings us closer to the moment where the king will finally reveal himself and gather all of his children in his palace and welcome us back home forever. May that day come. B'mheira v'yameinu, amen.